Today on Parenting for the Long Run, we have a treat. We are going to interview a person whose credentials in the parenting department are unimpeachable, as evidenced by the fact that she has borne 10 children, has homeschooled each one of them, and they are all now functioning adults in society, paying taxes, raising their own kids, doing all those things. And she did all this while putting up with me as a husband for nearly 40 years now. So, without further ado, let's get started and talk to my wife, Laura O'Reilly.
I'm all in. Push your chips to the middle. I'm all in for the cards as they may. I'm all in. Push your chips to the middle. I'm all in. Go broke or get paid.
Well, welcome back to our podcast, Parenting for the Long Run. As you see, I have my beautiful wife, Laura, here with me, as promised, to discuss kind of I put it as disruption of newborns. Laura has some views on that she holds very strongly. So we'll let her address those here in a moment. We didn't really plan this. I always wear black, almost always wear black. And she just happened to wear black today, but she looks beautiful in anything. So let us begin our time with a short word of prayer, and then we will jump into the issue of how you adapt once you have a newborn. Lord, I thank you for the blessing of children, and thank you that you have seen fit to bestow that blessing on our family 10 times over. And we just thank you for the great joy that each of those children brought to us. Pray that this would be a benefit to those who hear, and that we would speak from your wisdom. Amen. Okay, so we talked earlier, if I don't look at the camera, and if Laura doesn't look at the camera, we're going to look at each other mostly. So you spoke earlier, when we were planning on this, that really you didn't think it was appropriate to think of a newborn as a disruption. Can you kind of expound on that?
Sure. Scripture says children are a blessing, and that's the way we need to view them. It's certainly a change in your lifestyle, but changes are good. We don't view a new job as a distraction or a new home as a distraction. Those are blessings, and so are children. If you view children as a disruption, or it always saddens me if I hear a mother say, oh yeah, they're just a little monster, that will soon become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because if you view them that way, that's the way others are likely to view your children. And that isn't something that I think any parent wants for their children. So yeah, you start with that they're a blessing, and you just need to change the way you do things because there's another person in the household.
Okay, so we've had friends and acquaintances who, from the outside looking in, that's, because it's difficult to assess what's going on, but they seem to reorient their entire life once they have a kid. And as I think back on it, I'm not sure that we really did that. So can you kind of explain to people what your attitude was once we had kids, and how you dealt, as you put it, with having this little child with you all the time who was totally dependent on you?
Pretty much, I just went about my day as I would normally go about it, except for the fact that I had someone to care for. And I was not a mom who was set on, I had to have a schedule. The child had to eat every 3 hours and sleep at this time. And I expected them to adapt to my schedule. And I learned to adapt to their schedule. I don't think parenting is not a flowchart where you can just say you put this information in and you get this result all the time. Every child is different physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and their needs are different. And to try and just come up with a rigid schedule, I don't really feel is beneficial for the child or for the mom, because often then the mom is tied to that schedule. She's wed. Oh, I can't leave the house between these times because the baby's sleeping or whatever. And everybody just sort of needs to learn to adapt from day to day.
And so there are needs, obviously. Kids have a need to take naps and eat. And you breastfed all our kids for the first year at least, I think. And so some people would view that as maybe awkward, but you just dealt with it with a blanket, typically, whether we were at a restaurant or wherever we were at.
Right.
And so we would go to restaurants or we would go to friends, and if the baby needed a nurse, then I'd go get the baby and hand them to you, or you'd get the baby and just nurse while you were there talking very discreetly with the blanket over you. Now, there were some, I think, was it Rachel, who was always trying to pull the blanket off?
Well, usually kids all reach that stage at some point as they're getting older. But yes, you have to learn to be modest. At the time, most of us, our older ones, were little. We lived in an area that was just normal. People didn't view that as
that being breastfeeding.
Breastfeeding as being something that was, oh my gosh, if you were doing that in public. We moved to Virginia, and there were some in church, if I breastfed in church, that were like, oh my goodness, So you just, again, you need to learn to adapt to those situations. Some people choose to do bottles part of the time for reasons like that. And that's, I don't think that that's inappropriate. People can, again, adapt to the situation. But yeah.
And I mean, the other thing that I think we discovered was kids can sleep virtually anywhere. And so if they have a nap time, being able to just cradle them and let them go to sleep, and then you can lay them down on a couch or even on the floor somewhere out of the way, and they're perfectly content to take their nap there as opposed to in their bed, typically. Now, sometimes, kids do like their own beds, and there have been times when we've been on vacations and then come home and put a child in their bed, and they're like, look around and see the familiarity of the bed, and they're like, oh, and just go to sleep immediately.
Right.
But generally speaking, things like naps can take place outside the home. So if you have an appointment as a lady, you want to get together with some of your lady friends, you understand, this requires more work, but still I can accomplish this even though I have this newborn here. So we talked a little bit about this already, I guess, maybe not, but the issue of sleep, and mostly the sleep of the parents. I remember as a new father, I do not think I have ever been more tired just because my sleep patterns, I was not used to having my sleep patterns broken up like they are with a newborn. And I quickly came to this conclusion that no man in his right mind would ever oppose breastfeeding because you can't do it. So really what our pattern became, generally, I think, I would wake up, maybe not all the time. Sometimes Laura would wake up before me and not wake me up. But if our child woke up, I'd go get the baby, I'd bring him or her back to the bed, hand her off to Laura, and Laura would nurse her, and then she might tap me later and say, hey, put up this baby. right? Is that accurate to say it? That's how it went?
Yeah,
So,
in the beginning.
yeah. So that seems to work well. Now, there are some in the medical field in particular who are strongly opposed to the idea of, they're opposed to sleeping with your baby. Whether or not they would go so far as to say they're opposed to nursing your baby while you're in bed, I suspect they would be, because they think, oh, you could fall asleep while you're nursing. And the reason for their reticence in that regard is they think that the mom is going to roll over on the baby and suffocate the baby. There are probably instances where that occurs. It strikes me that the risk of that is relatively low, but there is a risk associated with it. And so we didn't do that at the start, right? We had how many kids before you started sleeping with them? Was Catriel the first one?
Yeah, we had our fifth we started sleeping with.
Okay. And so we've done it both ways. And even with Catriel, sometimes, I'm trying to remember, because it all kind of becomes a blur after, you're removed from it for a while. I presume, did she have her own bed at all?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we still sometimes put her in her own bed. Mm-hmm. So we kind of came up with 4 options for sleeping. And the one is what the medical community would recommend, which is, you get up and either feed the baby with a bottle, or the mom nurses the baby while they're up and puts the baby back in their own bed. Okay, so that's kind of, I think, I'm not trying to put words in the medical community's collective mouths, but that's probably what many in the medical community would recommend. The other is what we did with our first 4, which is the dad gets up. I would recommend that you do this, Dad. Give your wives a break. Grab the baby when the baby wakes up. Bring the baby back. Let the baby nurse. Then when the mom's done nursing the baby, you get up, take the baby back to their bed, and lay them down. Now, the problem associated with that is typically the kids would prefer to be next to their mom. I mean, you think about it, and it's perfectly logical, right? The baby has been with their mom for 9 months. And so they're used to all those things. They're used to the mom's heartbeat. They're used to the mom's feel. They're used, to the mom's touch, in essence. And so they would probably prefer that circumstance. That's not the case with every baby. We've had friends who have had babies who really just wanted to be left alone, so, particularly to sleep. But so in our case, we had our oldest daughter, and I would go through this routine, and I would go to lay her down, and she would start awake and then start crying. And so I'd take her back to bed. She'd go to sleep. After about 2 days of this, I was like, okay, I cannot do this anymore. And so I said, okay, kid, you are just going to have to stay here. And I think it was at 4 o'clock in the morning that number sits in my mind. And basically Rachel cried until 6 or 6:30. And I literally was restraining my wife, holding her in bed. No, we can't get up. We can't get up. We can't get up. Now, you have an opinion about that. And go ahead and share your opinion in that circumstance.
I would not recommend that philosophy with a 2-day-old or a 3-day-old. Phil's point was that if you lose that battle, then the next time you encounter it, it would be more difficult to win the battle. With a little one, a newborn, I don't think they're going to remember that if you wait 3 months to have that battle. So I personally enjoyed sleeping with the baby because I like that snuggle time as well. and it was more restful than having to get up and down. However, there is a point when you do start putting the child back to bed, if they become truly accustomed to being with you, that you are going to have most likely a battle in putting them in their own beds. With the younger ones, our kids always shared rooms, and so if I was just putting them to bed in their own bed in our room, there would be a battle. But when they were old enough to go to their siblings' rooms, then they were totally fine with that. That was an easy transition for them. But if you do have a battle, you do have to choose to win it. But I would wait to make that battle.
Yeah. So
later time in their lives, not right off the bat.
Yeah. And I think that there is a lot of wisdom in that. I don't think I mentioned this up to this point, but Rachel, our firstborn, who was the one who we had that experience with, when I had just graduated with my master's and we didn't know where we were going to live, and we ended up moving a whole bunch that first summer after she was born. And she would just go into a crying fit when she saw moving boxes come out. And I suspect part of that might have been mitigated had we allowed her to sleep in our bed. You know, she would have been more secure in her position in the family, and known that we were always going to be around had we allowed her to do that. And so I think Laura's advice there is well-founded, and we didn't necessarily do that with any of our other kids. Now, what Nara mentioned and what I have mentioned kind of implies choose your battles wisely. Okay, so that was a battle I probably shouldn't have fought, but I hadn't really, being a new parent, hadn't thought through it. And, you know, I was kind of going under this assumption that the child should sleep in their own bed, right? But there are times where you have to say, okay, well, this battle is one that needs to be fought and I have to win it. Pick your battles carefully, but once you start the battle, man, you had better be ready to win. And there are some battles that are tough to win. The last issue, well, we already talked about this some, training our children to be adaptable. You talked about that a little bit, that rather than catering to the kids and always thinking we have to reorient our lives to them, that is, you and I, expected our kids to be able to adjust their schedule in accordance with events that came up. So what are some of the benefits associated with that, you think?
Well,
I kind of threw this question at her. We had talked about this, but, you know, I gave a list of questions and this one's out of left field. Go ahead.
We should all be adaptable to situations. Life changes all the time, and it's not any different for the children. Your situation will change. You will move, you will have jobs, you will aging parents. It's good to be adaptable, and kids learn that. I think it's a little easier with a second and third child because obviously there's already a built-in, everybody's learned to adapt. Those kids maybe learn easier because they're not your only person that you have to take care of. My grandfather used to say there's nothing more egocentric than a newborn. And kids have to learn to not be selfish. They're not the only person out there. And as you start integrating more children into the family, the younger ones learn that a little faster because there's always somebody there who also has needs. The older ones learn it as well because they see the needs of other ones and they learn to help with those other ones. certainly that's, I think, an amazing thing with a large family was watching the other ones learn to interact and help take care of or help teach them different things. So like I said, everybody's got to learn to adapt. And children, newborns aren't any different. They have to learn to be on the go some days. Some days you're on the go a lot, and some days you're not. Some days you're quiet, and yeah, they can learn to adapt to those situations just like anybody else.
So we talked about this. We have kind of a difference of opinion on this. I'm not exactly sure what I thought the hardest stage of parenting was, but you thought that 3 kids was the hardest. Is that true?
Definitely.
And why was that?
I have always told other women that if you can have 3 children, you can have any number you want. And the reason being is you're suddenly outnumbered. You have 2 hands to hold 2 kids. There's one parent to take one parent to take the other. But when there's a third one, there's one loose, And once you learn to juggle the needs of the 3 and keeping them corralled when you're going through the parking lot and all of those sort of things, yeah, you've learned to adapt and manage those skills, and the next one's that much easier. Plus, as I said, the older ones are getting more mature and more self-reliant. They don't need you as much, and they also enjoy then being helpers and going and getting things for you or whatever. Playing with, the oldest 2 will play with each other while you're dealing with the younger one. And so, yes, getting past that third child is the hardest struggle.
Now, that doesn't mean that when you have 4 children or 5 children, it suddenly gets easier. I mean, it is easier in a sense because the younger children are older, obviously, and so they can't help. But even the older children can give you heart attacks at times. We were at Denver International getting ready to... Actually, I think both these events were on the same trip to pick up the same friend at the... We get there, walk out of the parking garage into the entryway of the airport. The elevator doors open and the elevator's full. And so I say, okay, well, we'll wait. We'll get the next elevator. Well, Rachel, who must have been 5 or 7, I'm not sure at the time, probably 5. She was not 7. She was not that old. She darts into the elevator, turns around, the elevator doors close, and the elevator goes down. And there we stand without our oldest child. And I told Laura, wait here, I'm running down the stairs. So I got there about the same time as the elevator did. Just got Rachel, gathered her up, and I don't know, I probably went up in the elevator. And then we picked up our friend and this gal who he was dating, and DIA has a tram that takes you in between terminals. And this was back before 9/11, so, we could go into the terminal even if we didn't have a ticket. Well, we walk up to the terminal gates, and the train gets there right as we get there. And the doors open, and people start going in and coming out. And I saw Gabriel, who at the time was like 3, go with Jeff, who had gone in the door that was down the train from us. And so I see that, and I'm kind of counting, okay, we're good. The announcement says, stand back from the doors, the train is departing. And I look out, and Gabriel is running towards our door. He has suddenly decided he doesn't want to be with Jeff, he wants to be with us. And I jump out and grab him and pull him in, and the recording goes, stand back from the doors, you're delaying departure. And I'm like, yes, I am. You should see what I would have done had we departed. But it's there are still some challenges associated with having those kids, but really the older kids help a lot and enable you to kind of juggle those things that are going on. Now, one of the questions that arises, and I know you have strong opinions on this, so I'm going to just let you voice them. What about daycare? When should I take my child to daycare? That's kind of a loaded question in this case. Go ahead. You speak on the issue of daycare.
There are maybe some instances where some parents are going to find that the mom truly has to work. That is not most instances. Most of the time, that's a choice. How do I want to say this? I would encourage people to not do daycare at all.
And that's based upon your own experience.
Yes. I was a child of daycare up until the time I was 6. And I had a very good daycare crew. They loved kids. They had 6 of their own, and they loved me as one of theirs and kind of adopted me. And yet I absolutely hated daycare because I wanted to be with my mom. And I longed for time with her. And
you said, wait, you just said you longed to be full-time with her. Is that what you meant?
I said I longed for time with her.
Oh, you longed for time with her. Okay, I'm sorry. Like hearing aids. I call these hearing aids, these are really wife pacifiers. I wear these because it makes my wife happy, and sometimes I doubt whether or not it helps my hearing. Okay, go ahead. So you longed for time with your mom.
Yes. And so I did not like being in daycare. A lot of people say, oh, kids need that socialization. Kids socialize, and, they socialize with mom. They socialize with siblings. They socialize in many other settings that you can provide for them where they don't need to be left or abandoned. And my experience, both as an individual and watching kids that have been taken to preschool or whatever, they are really not benefiting from that. There is a tremendous amount of separation anxiety. You are not helping them to socialize in a way that's beneficial. Because of that, they might learn to make the best of a bad situation, but it doesn't necessarily produce a child that's secure or independent or
able to interact with adults.
Because that is you don't want your child to just socialize with their peers. Children need to learn to socialize with adults, and they need to learn to socialize with, as they age, with younger people. And there's a lot of negative socialization that takes place in daycare or school. So socialization's not always a healthy thing. And if you're not there supervising that, then it's definitely not healthy, not just because it may be bad, but as I said, kids want to be with their parents. And so there's an insecurity that you're breeding. Even growing up, if mom took me to church, my mother was a Christian. She'd accepted Christ when I was a baby, but my father wasn't. And so we only attended part of the time. But she would always stick me in Sunday school and children's church and whatnot. And I resented that. I resented it because I viewed it as another way for her to just get rid of me, to dump me. I didn't like VBS for the same reason.
VBS is Vacation Bible School, for those of you who are not.
And anytime that I was in a program of any sort, to, ballet class, whatever, I didn't like it because I just viewed that as another way for my mom to get rid of me and have more alone time. And so,
even though that wasn't, looking back, that wasn't your mom's intent.
Correct. That was not her intent.
But because of the daycare, that is the association that you made.
Correct.
So, you know what? as Laura pointed out, implied, we didn't have her work after we started having kids. She worked while I was in school, then she got pregnant, and after our oldest was born, I think she went back to work a handful of times to train somebody else. But I was home at that time and took care of the baby.
Yeah, that was only a couple of days.
And, again, we understand there are some situations where parents are in genuine hardship and the mom has to work. But oftentimes, I'm trying to speak circumspectly here because I don't want to come off as holier than thou. Oftentimes, it is a decision based upon one of two factors. Either the mom thinks that really motherhood is beneath them, that they will not find fulfillment in that, or they want a lifestyle that is above the income level that their husband could, that the husband alone, I shouldn't say their husband because that implies that it's a woman's who's pushing this, that the husband's salary alone cannot accommodate. But if you conscientiously determine that you are going to live on one salary, you would be surprised that you can do that. We lived in a relatively high cost of living area, and the Lord opened doors so that we could have Laura home full-time, and I worked full-time. And even as I think I mentioned in the podcast on assumptions, even with me working full-time, really when I was doing it right, my purpose in that was to take care of Laura and my kids. And I remember having this kind of epiphany once. We went for a walk when I was still in school, and there's Laura, walking ahead with a couple of the kids, and I'm pushing the stroller, and I was like, wow, I got to get a better job. I have to support these people. And so, husbands, it is as important that you kind of embrace that responsibility and say, hey, honey, this is an important job. I support you in this job. Let's try to make a go of it. You stay home with the kids, and I'll do what I can to provide for you and them. And then you would be surprised how much less expensive it is when the mom stays home. You had an experience at the grocery store where some guy came up who did meal planning and delivered prepared groceries. Wasn't that the thing? You don't remember the guy who asked you how much you spent on groceries a week?
Yeah.
He had this idea. He saw Laura with all these kids, and he thought, a likely target. And so he was going to propose this plan where really their service planned the menu and bought all the groceries and brought them to you because you would save so much money by having home-cooked meals, right? And he asked you how much you spent a week or whatever it was.
Yeah. I don't even remember the sum at the time. We had 6 kids when he met me in the store. But whatever my number was that I gave him, his eyes bulged out of his head, and he was like, never mind, and turned around and walked away. He didn't have anything to offer.
Yeah.
I already cooked way cheaper than anything that he could supply. So
Right. And because she made a conscientious effort to be frugal in her meal planning, and we actually, being an economist, I can sometimes analyze things more than perhaps I should, but one instance that stands out in my mind was we were thinking about Laura making her own bread. Well, making your own bread is kind of difficult unless you have a mixer, and we kind of wanted to do it the healthy way, so we thought, well, we could grind our own flour. So I did an analysis. Okay, how many loaves of bread do we eat a week as a family? And I think it came down to 10 or something. And how much does that cost? And how long would it take us to pay for a larger mixer and a grinder? And it came out to like 6 months. And so we went ahead, we bought that. The bread was much better, and it significantly reduced our food bill because kids just ate a lot of the bread because it was so good. And so there are tricks like that you can do that would enable you to cut costs and afford to just have one income earner in your household. And so our recommendation is, if you can figure out any way to keep from utilizing daycare, do so. All right. Any closing thoughts before we go? I think Laura very succinctly said when we were talking, and she kind of reiterated this in this session, really do not view kids as a disruption. View them as a blessing. And if you do that, then you will go into parenting and deal with the challenges of having a newborn around it with a much different attitude than if you view them as some type of albatross that you have to deal with. So if you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments. Thank you to my wife. She actually is the one who should be doing this parenting podcast, and I'll have her back as she deems appropriate. If you haven't already, click the like button and share this with your friends who would benefit from it, and we will see you on the next episode. Thank you.